The following production is part of the Play Some Video Games podcast network.
Greetings, Oni, and welcome to Bored with Video Games, the gaming podcast that strives for the right balance of coverage for games you play on your table and on your television. You can think of us as the Len of gaming podcasts. We're a proud member of the PSVG Podcast Network and a member of the Make Us Better team over on Patreon. I am one of your hosts, Kyle, and joining me on this co-op adventure, the guy who steals all the sunshine. Josh, how are you doing this evening?
Oh boy, Kyle, you wouldn't believe me if I told you. Would you believe that I'm exhausted?
What? That seems unbelievable.
I have to leave work early today with a sick child, 103-degree temperature all day consistently.
That's warm.
Cold baths, food, nothing. So I am anticipating a wake up soon when the Tylenol wears off right around 10 p.m. and then again at 2 a.m.
Gotcha.
Should be fun.
That doesn't sound great at all.
Oh, no, it's just one of those benefits of having children and not muting my phone. So, that's nice. And that's a text message saying, he's waking up. Great.
Perfect. Well, hey, everyone. We really appreciate you tuning in. And I'm going to let you in on a little inside baseball. This is the second time we've recorded this episode. So if some of our transitions are quicker than usual or don't seem as drawn out and weird, it's because we've already done this once. But then the recording didn't work very well. So our hour-plus episode was combined. It was crunched down to 30 minutes, and it made no sense. So we're giving this a whirl again because we care so much about all of you, and we appreciate the fact that you're willing to hang out with us each week and listen. So thanks so much for joining us. As always, if you have any feedback, questions, suggested topics, hit us up at BoredWithVG on Twitter and on Instagram, also at BoredWithVG. You can find us on Facebook.com/BoredWithVG and give us an awesome 5-star rating over there. That would be great. Still waiting for that first fanfic at BoredWithVG@gmail.com. I'm really looking forward to that one coming in. And then I always use that hashtag BoredWithVG on all the social medias so we can follow the games that you're playing as you're playing them. And that includes video game screenshots. Don't be afraid to use that BoredWithVG hashtag there as well.
Even if you aren't a member of Bored with VG, please use that Bored with VG hashtag.
Right. It's not limited to just Josh and I using it. Anyone is welcome to use that hashtag. And if you're interested in helping make us better, check out Patreon at patreon.com/makeusbetter. And a big thank you to all the supporters over there. Those of you who are chipping us a few bucks, we do greatly appreciate it. So enough with the housekeeping. Josh, why don't you tell me one more time about the games you've been playing on your tabletop?
I would love to. Actually, the one thing that I didn't necessarily mind doing is talking about this game again.
Excellent.
Which is an interesting thing. Okay, so I've played now the number 3 hotness game on Board Game Geek, the game you can't buy anywhere, apparently. I played Disney's. Well, is it Disney's? I played Wonder Forge's Disney's Villainous.
Right, which is really bizarre because when you go to Target, that's like what you have to put in to look it up.
Yeah, that's right. That's true. Also, apparently, a subsidiary of Ravensburg.
Oh.
So apparently, that's what Barnes & Noble has it listed as. So yes, Villainous. Let's talk about Villainous. It's very unique, first off, which probably is why it's so sought after. Then, of course, is the theme, probably tied for why it's so sought after. So you are playing as a Disney villain. In the box, you have 6 villains to choose from. Let's see if I can name them. Prince John, Jafar, Maleficent, the Queen of Hearts, Ursula, Captain Hook. Is that 6? I'm forgetting somebody.
I'm trying to think of who else it might be.
I probably just named them all. Anyways,
I think
if I'm missing somebody, I might be. That's very possible. Anyways, so you're playing as these villains. Each villain has a board in front of them. So a location board has either 4 or 5 locations. My memory is weaker and weaker by the minute.
I believe it is 4 locations.
It is a 2 to 6 player game also, which I didn't get right away yesterday. You have 4 locations. We also have a deck of cards. There's your draw deck, and then there is a fate deck. You also have a handy fold-out villain guide, we'll say, and it essentially tells you, the person playing as the villain, what you're going to need to do to win the game, to i.e. Complete your objective. So the way the game works is each villain has a specific objective they have to complete. It's not secret. There is something on your villain card that you do read out loud. You don't necessarily have to read to your opponent how you get to your objective, because what you see on your player board is like a layman's version of what you actually have to do. So you're playing against other players, but realistically you're just playing to complete a goal, and your opponents are like speed bumps in the road. And they can mess with you, and that's where your fate deck comes into play. In your fate deck, you have heroes from your character's storyline. So Captain Hook would have like Wendy, Peter Pan, The Lost Boys, all these things. So you have that, and as you play on your board, you have 4 icons on each location, and each icon is an action, and those will tell you how many you get to do. One of those actions each turn. One of those might be a fate card icon, and what that means is if you go to a location with a fate card icon, you get to draw from your opponent's fate card deck. You draw 2 cards, you decide which card you're going to play against them, and then you play that card on a location. When you play a fate card on a location, it covers 2 actions on a location on the other player's board. So if you notice someone's going to a specific location all the time, you're more inclined to cover up 2 things on that. The locations will give you power, which you would probably, looking at it, think of it as currency or coins. One spot, at least on Captain Hook's, was 3 coins. So it was, beneficial to go there because you're also paying to play cards from your deck. So if you want to recruit an ally from your deck, it usually costs money. You can also attach weapons or items to an ally. Those also can cost money. Sometimes they don't. If you want to use an action card, it costs power. We'll call it power instead of money. So it is important in the game to do that. Now, we play 2 players. Obviously, adding more players changes the game entirely. It also could lead to bullying, the bullying effect, if you've played board games like that. So I think it's also important to take to take in mind. But remember, while the game is heavy on take that, it isn't the goal of the game. You don't win by punishing your opponent. You can stall your opponent, but you win by completing your objective. Doesn't matter how much you punish the person you're playing, you win by completing your objective. The game is incredibly beautiful. It's very well done. The art is great. The cards, even the box finish is different and unique to board game boxes. It's like a linen finish. It's very nice. I really enjoyed it, and I've only played 1 villain. I still have 5 more villains to try. And this game is ripe for expansions. In fact, on the back of the instruction booklet, there's a link that you can type into your whatever you use, and it asks you, like, what other villain would you like to play as? And it gives you a list of all these other Disney villains that are not in the game. So clearly they're also thinking of that, which is good. But the whole way the game plays, easy to learn, pretty good for ages. It could be a little challenging for younger kids, but I'm thinking like 8+ is probably a good age for this game. It's just a phenomenal game, and I said it the other day. I'll say it again because you don't know that I said it, but I feel inclined to keep saying that. It's a must-buy in my mind if you can get your hands on it. And if you're a Disney fan, in my opinion, doesn't matter. You're going to get this game anyways, probably. But this is a great, great, fun game based off of 1 play. I should put a disclaimer out there.
So one thing I think that I am always interested in games like this, that, you kind of have the variable player power that is trying to put you in the shoes of that villain. in this case. Obviously, you've only played one villain, but when playing it, how much did it seem like the powers that you had, like how much did it seem to fit? Because you're Captain Hook, right?
Yes. No,
how much did it
seem, Jafar.
Jafar, excuse me, sorry. How much did it seem to fit Jafar? Like, did the abilities and the way things work, did they seem like they fit Jafar as a character from what you know about him from Aladdin?
Yeah, so he has a hypnotize power where he can literally take control of heroes in the game. He has the snake scepter. He has everything he has is very specific to Jafar. So, and I'm glad you asked that because I did forget to mention every villain plays totally different. Every villain's deck, from what I've heard and from the two I've seen, are built around the lore of that villain. So my wife was Maleficent, and her whole deck was like creating curses, cursing the land, affecting heroes who enter like the thorns and all these kinds of things. So, and she didn't have a lot of allies like I did. She had some, but Jafar had a heavier attack deck. But you're not attacking each other. You're just attacking heroes that are played against you from essentially your own deck. So, thematically they nailed it. Like you get Iago as like an ally. You get like the Sultan's guards as allies. Like the heroes I went against were like Aladdin, Abu, and like someone even said like it seems super appropriate when Abu steals the magic lamp from you, and it happens like if he shows up on the spot. Same with Aladdin. If there is an ally across or an item across from them, they take that item until they're defeated. So you also lose that item, and if it's like a sword, it will boost Aladdin's attack.
Well, he's a street rat. What do you expect?
Yeah. So he goes from a 5 to a 6 with a scimitar, and then you have to pay power to defeat. Oh, sorry, you don't have to pay power. You have to pay power to hypnotize, which is what Jafar does, but you have to use attack from your allies to defeat them. And when on Maleficent's fate deck, it had like a militia or guards card, and you had to have more than one ally attack the guards. So you would have to essentially, and when you attack, you lose your allies that you're using to attack. You don't keep them over, even if they're more powerful than who they're fighting. They're all discarded. So It's even more like you have to put a little bit more thought into just like wasting allies.
Right. Well, I'm really excited for this game, and I don't have it yet. I know it's basically sold out everywhere being Target, because Target had it early. But this is on the short list of things to get. That is for sure. Anything?
Yeah, I can't wait for Kevin Austin got it. I can't wait for him to talk about it because, he has the kids, the girls to play with. So it's definitely a different perspective we'll get that we wouldn't necessarily see in our circles.
Absolutely. All right. Anything else you've been playing on your tabletop, or just Villainous?
Just Villainous so far.
Awesome. So that's Villainous from Wonderforge. Designed by Prospero Hall, that wonderful design collective over there that has done things like The Art of Chill with Bob Ross. I think that was one of the games that they did. So, yeah. But this seems like potentially Villainous is definitely shaping up to be their most critically acclaimed game, which is very cool to see that.
For sure.
So for me, I haven't been playing too much on my tabletop. What I did do is play more of the Quest for Dorado. But I do want to talk about it a little bit because I think I have played it in a way that is different than the initial very base game that I played when I talked about it last week. What I did go back and do was play and followed some more complicated board designs that they have that they include in the game. So when you buy the game, they have the base setup that you should do for your first games, but then they include additional ways to set up those variable boards and different paths for you to go try to escape or make it to El Dorado, depending on how you want to look at it. So it definitely did some more of that, and also then played with the Caves variant. And what the Caves variant is on the boards, you have basically mountain spaces that you cannot move your pieces across. So as you're going on your expedition and you're moving through, the jungles or the forest, the jungles or going over the rivers, there are sometimes caves that you cannot cross or go onto. Mountains. Well, what the Caves variant does is the game comes with these 36, I think it is, cave tokens that you stack them in piles of 4 on top of each of the mountains. And if your character ends up next to, not on, but next to one of these tokens, you're able to explore the cave. And basically what you do is you just take one of the tokens off the top. That token then sits in front of you. Most of these tokens are going to be extra movement pieces. So it kind of gives you the ability to play an extra card on a turn, if you will. So maybe you get to move an additional jungle space, or you get to move an additional paddle space to get through an additional river spot. But there also are some more versatile ones that sometimes you can remove cards from your hand from the game to thin out your deck and make sure you're drawing those more powerful cards more often. Or maybe you are able to, instead of removing an item from the game, because some of the cards that when you play them, you have to remove them. This allows you to keep, those cards for one extra play later on in the game. So it gives you a whole bunch of different powers and different ways to approach the game. And I think it just really solidified how much I enjoy this game, because it can be very basic, very entry level, a great way to get people into board games that maybe haven't played a ton of the designer or hobby style. But you can also make it extremely complex. You can make the paths that you go very unique. Like I said, they include, I think it's 6 to 8 additional paths that they have created that they make, as beginner more challenging and most challenging. But then they also give you guidelines in order to kind of create your own different ones that you want to do. So I think with that caves variant, with the fact that you can kind of change up these boards as much as you want to, I think, from a weight perspective, the general entry level of understanding how to play the game is very straightforward, but I feel like you can make it far more complex with these other things built into it. So still really enjoying the quest for Dorado. A super easy recommend if you are looking for something that you can sit down, play with the family. Again, I think, 8+ is probably where this is at. The game's also very quick once people know how to play it. You can bust this game out in 30 to 60 minutes. So really think that, the quest for Dorado, if you're looking for that good family weight game that you can play with the kids, it plays up to 4 people, I would definitely recommend it. That's from the good folks over at Ravensburger and designed by Rainer Knizia. So that is what I've been playing on my tabletop. Josh, what have you been playing as far as video games go?
Oh boy. While I think about that, I did want to say we do have Quest for Eldorado. I picked it up right after Gen Con at Barnes & Noble last year. They randomly had 1 copy on the shelf.
Oh, nice.
And I was like, I don't think they're supposed to have this. So I just bought it because I hadn't seen it anywhere yet. We still haven't played it, though. But I'm glad to hear you like it. And it sounds like a game that the wife will like, too. So I look forward to getting that to the table as well.
Awesome.
Okay, so video games. So Vigor is a new game that is out on Xbox Early Access.
Game preview.
Thank you. I messed that up last time too. It's a $20 game right now, and it's a battle royale game. It doesn't necessarily package itself that way, but essentially it is. Where it differs is, and you know what? I said, we're talking about it. I'm like, I'm not sure if it's in Soviet Russia or not. I should have looked that up. But I think it's in a setting similar to that. It's third person, and it's similar to PUBG. Maybe PUBG meets H1Z1. And instead of having your loading screen where you're waiting to drop into a map, you have this secluded hut out in the middle of the woods. There's a stream, a waterfall, a gun range where you can shoot dinnerware, plates, and stuff like that. You can go into your hut and you can equip yourself. You can change your outfit. There's a few other things you can do, and then you can go to your map on your corkboard. And once you open your map, it will bring up a bunch of locations you can go to. And essentially, that's where you'll do your battle royale. It'll load in, and then from there, everything is pretty much PUBG, with the exception of there are escape zones on the map. And if you go to the escape zone, you essentially retreat from the fight. And if you, I believe, all the gear you gathered with you in the map carries over with you. It's kind of like a scavenging mission. Maybe think the Division Dark Zone kind of thing. So I played a little bit of that. It's only 2 hours of trial time. Not for me necessarily. I'll give it another shot and see if it grows on me. And then other than that, I've been playing Paladins on the Switch with like everyone else in the world, apparently.
So really quick, before we move on to Paladins from Vigor, I want to talk to you about this just a little bit.
Please.
So it's Norway. It takes place in Norway.
Okay.
So there we go. So are you aware of who the developer of this game is?
I am not.
So the game is...
I probably was at one point.
No, it's okay. So the company that's making it, or that makes it, is Bohemia Interactive, who's also well known for making, Arma and DayZ.
Oh, perfect.
So
okay.
I feel like it seems like this game fits very well into what they, kind of have done in the past. But so if I understand, you go in and you do your thing and you kind of are in the area, you're fighting, you're collecting resources, but then do you leave and like have your own base that you're building?
You don't
like,
build it. It's like established. It's not,
okay.
You don't build onto it. It's like essentially going in Far Cry 2 like top of a hill that has a house on it.
Okay.
But it's just no bad guys in the area.
Okay. Gotcha.
You can explore. It's bordered, so you can't go past like certain areas. There's like a wall, so you can't like jump off the waterfall or whatever.
Okay. Okay.
So basically, like an encampment or compound, if you will. Probably compound is the better word.
Gotcha. Okay. Makes sense. Cool. All right. Sorry. You can move on to Paladins now if you'd like.
Oh, no, that's okay. Yeah, I've been playing Paladins like everybody else. I've been playing on the Switch. I do have it on the Xbox. I have played it a little bit on the Xbox. It's one of those games, though, that it's a destination game for me. People are playing it on the Switch.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it has cross-play yet.
It does not yet.
But I'm sure that we'll see it, at least between Xbox and Nintendo.
I think Hi-Rez has said that they are working on it for sure between Xbox and Switch. I think for sure. Probably PC too, but I think I saw a tweet from them saying Xbox and Switch.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I hope so. We'll see what happens. But yeah, I mean, I liken it to... So Fortnite is like the arcadey PUBG. This is like This is like that to Overwatch. So this is like the Fortnite to Overwatch. That's what I'm trying to say.
So you're saying it's wildly more popular and successful?
Well, it's definitely not that. The UI is a cluttered mess. It's very wonky. So you can clearly tell the differences between the games. But you know what? I'll tell you what. One of my gripes with Overwatch, I can't read anything on the main menu because their white background blurs out all the white lettering. That drives me nuts.
Well, it depends on when you log into the game, like what season and like what patch they're on as to what the color of the background is.
Okay,
so sometimes it's much easier to read.
Yeah, every season I have like an honest pen and paint, but I'm not here to complain about Overwatch.
That's right, because I will fight you every step of the way.
I know. I don't want to start any fights. It's enjoyable. I only have the base characters unlocked. I haven't unlocked anybody extra yet. I do the thing that anyone does with these types of games. I just kind of been trying to find my character style. And, it's not, because it's not as competitive as Overwatch, you don't find the same team support as you do in Overwatch. So there's not as much learning in the game necessarily. Like when I play Overwatch with Kyle, like if I'm getting too far ahead, Kyle will tell me, get back behind the shield. Like that's how you learn. In this game, I was saying I ended up being a frontline guy. I put up my shield, and 1, no one got behind it, and 2, no one protected me from getting killed from the enemies coming on the other side of the shield. So it was a little frustrating, but it's something, like I said, it's nice. I can sit in bed, put the Switch on the TV because the controls are crap in handheld mode, and play a couple matches and then, retire for the evening if you want to use some old-timey slang. But otherwise, I'm enjoying it. And I did download Battlefield 1 again because they just released a 4K upscale, upgrade, whatever you want to call it, patch. So I'm going to jump back into that just to check it out. And they released Battlefield 1 Armageddon DLC for free yesterday, which had been previously, I think, $20 or something like that. So I'll check that out as well. But that's my video gaming.
Awesome. Very cool. So for me, still playing Captain Toad Treasure Tracker, working my way now into Storybook 3 of the game. And I think one thing that is slightly surprising to me about this game, I still enjoy it a lot. I think it's really fun. I'm having a great time playing it. I think it's interesting, though, that I kind of thought that these diorama puzzle boards would get more challenging as the game went on, and they just don't. They're just different. So I think that's one thing that has been interesting. There's definitely been a couple of them that have maybe spiked a little bit in difficulty, or they're longer, so they just seem more difficult. But the one I did right before coming down to find out that we were going to re-record took me less than a minute. And I got all of the like little extra diamonds in it. I got the star. I got the hidden little mushroom that you can find. I got like everything done, and it took me like 60 seconds. And I'm, midway now through the third story. And I just find it interesting that I kind of thought as this went on, things would get more complicated and more complex. And just overall, they're not doing that, which part of me is okay with that, though, because I think it might cause me to lose interest if I looked at something and I was like, oh, this is going to take me way too long to figure out, or it's going to be way too challenging. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. It's just something I'm surprised by. I thought that these dioramas would become a little more brain burnery than they have been. But still, like I said, enjoying the game. When I continue to kind of play it, I usually pick it up right before bed and play 2 or 3 little boards and call it a night. So we'll continue to work my way through that. Another thing that I started recently is PlayStation had their mid-year sale at the beginning of July, and there was a lot of games on super sale. And there was a particular PS4 exclusive that I had not played yet and had not purchased yet that was on sale pretty significantly. So I picked up Nioh to give this game a whirl. Now, I played Bloodborne and I liked it. The Dark Souls games I've always found okay. Bloodborne is definitely my favorite of them just because the speed of the game fit a little better with kind of how I like to play video games and what the Souls games do. So I was like, you know what? We'll try Nioh. Now, I had played the Nioh beta back when it was released prior to the game coming out, and I died a whole bunch and never got past like the 4th dude in the game in the beta, and was pretty much resigning myself to the fact that I'm never going to play this game ever again. Well, then I bought it, and when the game started, it started differently than the beta did. So I was like, okay, maybe this will be fine. Maybe everyone in the beta was just super overpowered and I just didn't know what I was doing. And you start the game, spoiler alert, in a prison, and the first thing you have to do is get out of prison, and the first prison guard killed me 4 times in a row. And I said to myself, maybe Nioh's not the game for me. But then I realized I was going the wrong direction, because if I had turned the other direction, there was a sword waiting for me. So I had been trying to punch this guard to death while he had a big sword, and it wasn't working out very well for me. But then as soon as I got the sword, things were fine. I was able to kind of progress. I got through the first like opening prologue, if you would. And the game's a little weird in that it has a prologue, then it sends you on this little that you play, then you get on this boat and you sail to Japan, and then it gives you the tutorial, and then you get into the game. So it's just really weird. You get kind of the same thing twice, but actually for a game like this, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, because it is kind of complicated. The controls are really important to knowing what to do, when to do it, how to do it. Getting that multiple times I didn't feel was a horrible thing. Then when the game actually started and I was in the first chapter, it was what the beta had been. And I got super worried because I was like, man, I died here a whole bunch. But this time I got much, much further without dying. I did eventually get to a part where I did die, mostly because there was like 6 dudes I was fighting at once. And that was just very challenging. And I didn't approach it very well. So then I died in a blaze of glory. So it has a lot of the same tropes, though, that you'd see in like a Dark Souls style game. Instead of campfires, they have these shrines that you pray at, and that's then where you respawn and your game is saved. That's where you can upgrade, so you can turn in the different things that you've been earning throughout it to boost different stats. Just like the other games similar to this, those slower, crunchier action RPGs. You have a stamina bar, so you have to be really thoughtful and careful about how you attack and when you attack. Dodging is very important. When you're fighting bosses, one hit from a boss can pretty much completely kill you. So you have to be really careful about those things. And typically these aren't game styles that I like, but so far I'm really enjoying my time with Nioh. I don't know if it's just the pace of it. I don't know if it's the environments, because just the world is very cool to be in. It's like a cool place to hang out. There's a lot of bad stuff happening, but it's kind of a neat place. It looks really gritty and awesome. You're like, yeah, I want to go get this thing. I'm on a mission to get a thing for Queen Elizabeth, I think. I don't really know what's going on in the story. They've told me, but I was a little confused. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it. It's something I'm definitely looking forward to playing more. I was looking for a little bit of a heavier game to get me through until Spider-Man, while playing a couple probably indie games in between here and there. So I think Nioh has definitely scratched an itch. The final thing that I've done is, as promised, I finished Far Cry 5. I promised Josh that I would do it. I did it. And now for approximately the next 5 minutes, we're going to talk about the end of Far Cry 5. This probably won't be as fiery as it was last time we did it.
I don't think so.
But if you care at all about spoilers for Far Cry 5 from a story perspective, skip about 5 minutes ahead in the podcast. And because I don't want to spoil it for you. With that, spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert. You should have skipped ahead by now. Josh, the ending of this game is stupid.
Yeah, I mean, video games are art. I don't know why you would say that.
You're right. Stupid probably isn't the word I should choose. You were right. I thought the ending for this game was disappointing in the fact that they had done so few breadcrumbs along the way for you to recognize the fact that, hey, nuclear bombs are going to go off everywhere and blow up the middle of Montana and probably a lot of the rest of the world as well. And granted, yes, I know that if you listen to the radio station and if you read the newspapers and do all these things, they're talking about all of the tensions and they're like, why does everyone have bomb shelters? I get it. I totally understand that there was some environmental storytelling and other things going on that should have led you to believe that this was imminent or that this was a thing that could happen. However, I feel like most players playing the game probably did not pick up on that. And that to me is really disappointing because I think they could have done some really, really cool things from a storytelling perspective to tie all of this together rather than make it seem like the biggest Deus Ex Machina ever.
Right.
Like, hey, this is just super convenient for Joseph. Look, the world blew up. It's just like he said it was going to. Like, it seemed so convenient.
Not to mention, like, you run into all these companions you can get to, like, fight by your side, but you have to interact with them, you have to do missions for them, and not a single one of them ever references what will eventually be the end of the game.
Right. Absolutely. And that's one of the things I think is most disappointing, because I think you could have easily, from a narrative perspective, talked about this cult is bringing these people together because the end of the world is coming. And they kind of talk about like the culling and doing these things, but it seems when they're like the cult's talking about much more about them doing it. Where I think if they had been talking about like, no, the world is going to burn, like it's all gonna, like you have to come join us, we'll be able to protect you, like you'll be the chosen ones. And then you are interacting and like maybe the side missions you're doing are picking up supplies for people because they're stocking their bomb shelters because the outside world's going to crud, or you're doing hunting missions to get meat for people for them to, dry and so that they can hang in their, bomb shelter. Like I think there's a lot of really cool things they could have done to not make it seem such out of left field when that ending came. And right. I appreciate the fact that they kind of give you the two options. Like you can do one of the two things at the end, but very clearly there's only one ending because I didn't do it. But apparently if you do the other ending, when it reloads back in, you're back at that same point to make the choice again.
Uh-huh.
So like, that's not that isn't an actual ending.
It's like a Telltale Games ending.
Kind of, yeah. Like it's back in and it's like, oh, hey, you're here again. Let's make sure we get the world blown up this time. Yeah. So, whereas like obviously when the world blows up and you load back in, everything's just fine.
Yeah, I know, right?
So yeah. So like I had said in our Discord, which you should definitely, if you're still listening to this because you're listening to the Far Cry 5 spoiler stuff, you should definitely check out the Discord, the Make Us Better Discord. We love talking about things over there. But that's why I said the end of this game really booted Far Cry 5 out of my top 10 for the year. I think they could have done so many cool. It could have had such potential to be awesome with how they chose the end of the game. I just feel they missed out on so many opportunities there. So I know I'm not supposed to judge games based on that. I'm only supposed to judge them on what they actually did, according to some people in our podcast network. But I wasn't a fan of what it did then. So we'll just leave it at that. So that's what I have been playing on my video game screen. But I am looking forward to, actually, very quick side note, PlayStation Plus games and games with gold games for this month are very good overall. Like
I think so. So how do I word this? So I downloaded Forza Horizon 2 today. Mm-hmm. I did not know that was the 10th anniversary edition. So it sounds like it's actually a updated version of the game.
Very cool.
So I couldn't believe it's been 10 years since that game came out.
Yeah. We're old, man. We're really old.
And I downloaded Dead Space 3, not realizing I already had it from EA Access. So
there you go. Double dip.
So, yeah. So, I mean, it's cool that I'm going to try and play Dead Space 3 again, hopefully co-op, because I did give it a whirl solo when it came out because of how much of a fan I am of the series. And I still stand by the fact that it ruined the series. But I only played it solo. So I will give it another shot cooperatively and see if that saves it.
Do you want to know a big secret? I've never finished one of those games.
Really?
Yeah, I played the first one, I think, for maybe an hour, and that was it. Yeah, I know, right? And it's not that I didn't like it. I don't remember what I was playing at the time, but when Dead Space came out, was in my time of like almost exclusive multiplayer gaming. I was super deep into Call of Duty, and that's what I was playing every night. So I've never actually finished. Yeah, like I said, I think I played like an hour of the original Dead Space, and that's about it.
Wow. Well, you missed out. I'll tell you that.
That's what I've heard.
Such a great series. And then for the PlayStation side, just to kind of get out my hesitancy on the game. So like Mafia 3, not a game for me, but I'll definitely try it because I've heard good things about it. I'm worried about Dead by Daylight because I really wanted to play this game. And all I've heard, just like Friday the 13th game, is like it's super reliant on multiplayer and that no one's playing it anymore. So hopefully this brings it back to life so I can try it. But it's a game I've always wanted to play. So I'm excited that it's there. I just am worried that my experience might not be optimal to what the game wanted me to experience.
I think that's totally fair, and I think that's why I'm hoping that having it on Plus will make it a little more where that community is a little more robust. Mafia 3, you already own it on PlayStation 4, just so you know.
Yeah, it's on it.
But yeah, I enjoyed my time with it. There are definitely some parts of it that are a little repetitive. There are some parts of it, and I played it for about 2 weeks once it launched. I never finished the game, but I really enjoyed the couple hours or the couple weeks that I was playing it. And there were just some things about it that weren't great that maybe they fixed, maybe they haven't. Just there was no fast travel, and some of those drives for missions were really long. Like you're going into the really deep swamp area and then having to drive like all the way back to the city. And it was, 5-6 minutes of just driving to get from like point A to point B. And you were done with the mission. You just had to go turn it in. But there was no fast travel system, which was a little disappointing. It definitely kind of made it feel more grindy probably than it should have. But Lincoln Clay, the main character, is a really, really interesting protagonist. He's a really interesting character. His story definitely, and like what he is doing, what he's trying to do, definitely overshadows the downfalls of that game. It's one of those situations where the protagonist and the character outweighs a lot of the other things that are going on there because he is so interesting and they do such a good job with him. So I think it's definitely, like you said, I think it's definitely worth a check out. It's what I think it's very similar to Mad Max in the sense that there's some people who love that game and there are some people who are just, it's never going to be their thing. And I think Mafia 3 fits in that it does some things really well, but maybe trips up in enough areas that not everyone is going to love it. But I think as a PlayStation Plus title, to me, that's kind of the perfect fit of giving people the chance to experience this thing they maybe never otherwise would have. And that's kind of, when it comes to games with gold titles and PlayStation Plus, like that's always what I'm looking for, are titles that maybe I was never going to play or wasn't going to buy, but now I have an opportunity to check them out because I was kind of interested, but not so much that I was ever going to actually spend the money on them. So.
Right. And I am very excited that people are getting For Honor for Xbox because that's a game I'm very much a fan of, and I know a lot of people slept on it just for whatever reason. So I'm really excited that people will get to play that in the middle of the month for Xbox.
Absolutely. And as a PlayStation VR owner, I'm really excited that I get Here They Lie for PlayStation VR as well. Nice. So yeah, and you also get the Knowledge is Power as part of the PlayStation Plus membership.
Yeah, what is that?
It is one of their PlayLink games that you have your phone, use your phone for. So it's kind of like a trivia game that you use as a PlayLink, which is cool. I think they're trying to make sure PlayLink stays alive a little bit at least. So I'm kind of I'm happy that they're kind of putting it out there still and still trying to encourage people to do that. So anyway, that was a little bit of a side note. But back to what was going to be the topic at hand. As you're listening to this, Gen Con has kicked off or is done, depending if you're listening to it a week from now. But Gen Con is going, and I think our friends at Barnes & Noble, Josh, are going to maybe help some folks pick up some of those hot Gen Con releases.
That's correct. A little bit less than a day ago, but still helping out. Last year, Barnes & Noble this was their first year doing Gen Con pre-releases or early releases, if you will, that are timed exclusives for Barnes & Noble. Last year was Downforce, Magic Maze, and Skyward. So 2 out of the 3 of those ended up being gigantic, award-winning hits. Paul, Magic Maze will come to you as soon as it's back in stock. I know you're listening. So this year, Barnes & Noble upped it to 10 games, 9 of them being exclusive to Barnes & Noble in their time frame. One of them being a game that you can't get anywhere else, so this might be the only place you can get Disney Villainous. So starting it off, we have Disney Villainous will be available at Barnes & Noble. I'm going to click it, sorry for the click, just to see if they have a date, because I know their dates aren't necessarily. So August 13th, so we're looking at about just under 2 weeks to get it. I'm gonna assume all their games are like that. So we have Blitz Bowl, the game. I think it's the RPG version of it. We have Detective, which is getting huge press right now. Very popular at Gen Con already, and it's only been day 1. It's actually been half day. It hasn't even been day 1. It was about like preview day. We have Lord of the Rings, Quest for Mount Doom, a Middle-earth adventure game, which looks very interesting. We have Space Marine Adventures, which is in the Warhammer universe. Pictomania by CGE, the people who do Codenames. Munchkin Crazy Kooks. We have Death Note Confrontation by IDW, which means it's probably a deck building game. We have a game called Woodlands by Ravensburger, and Hail Hydra by who knows, but Marvel's Hail Hydra. And it looks like a hidden identity game similar to Resistance. So those are the 10 games that you will be able to get at Barnes & Noble. Regardless of what you think of those titles, that speaks volumes to Barnes & Noble's commitment to board games. And if you look at like Target now too, like it's becoming very competitive with retailers, which is great for us. But what do you think, Kyle? What's caught your eye out of these 10 games?
Well, I think obviously Disney Villainous, I think, obviously your glowing review of it, how good the early reviews have been from both, game reviewers, but also just those on Board Game Geek. I think that's something that is definitely up there for me, as well as Detective. I think the one thing that excites me about Detective is actually the price. Portal games, I feel like, tend to be pretty expensive. So a $50 price point for them actually seems kind of cheap to me. Like, I feel like that seems very affordable compared to Portal games typically. And maybe I'm wrong about that. I just feel like typically when their games come out, they tend to be a little more expensive, but maybe I'm just misremembering. The one thing that worries me a little bit about that is the instruction booklet. I think that, I love Robinson Crusoe, but getting through that instruction booklet and learning the game that way was very challenging. So I'm hoping that this one is a little easier to navigate through. I think you've maybe had some similar issues with Portal rule books in the past, yes?
And probably in the future, yeah.
Probably. So I think, like I said, that's just, hopefully that's something that gets worked out a little bit better. That's always just been a little tough for me. And then obviously the Lord of the Rings game, or maybe not obviously, but the Lord of the Rings game, the Quest to Mount Doom, is something I'm interested in. My wife is a huge Lord of the Rings fan. So anytime that I can get a game that is going to be in a theme that she enjoys, I'm usually the person who's bigger on theme and she's bigger on mechanics. So if I can get a game that's in a theme she enjoys, I'm always happy for it, because I love playing games that are up my theme alley. But since she doesn't really care about that, anytime I can try to scratch that itch for her, I'm definitely going to go ahead and do that. So those are the 3 for me that have piqued my interest. How about for you, sir?
It's funny. I did 3 and we couldn't figure out what the other one that is missing was, but it was whatever my other pick was, because
I know that,
and I don't remember what it was.
Right. So for those, when we first recorded this episode, there was 12 games available, and now there's only 10, but we can't remember which 2 aren't there anymore.
Yeah. So for me, Hail Hydra made the list because it just squeaked right in there. It was number 4 yesterday. Woodlands, something that my wife was immediately drawn to, therefore, as am I. And then the Lord of the Rings game, and I said simply because I don't have a Lord of the Rings game yet. That's not the only reason. It looks good, but like I said, I've said before, I've been eyeing Hunt for the Ring because it's a hidden movement game, and this game I don't think is hidden movement, but the map kind of hits like the same notes as the Hunt for the Ring. So I think it looks very good. And it comes with the one ring in the box. So.
It does come with the one ring, which is very cool. All right. So one thing we did yesterday when we first recorded this episode is we did a nifty little auction when it came to game franchises. Now, you may have noticed on Twitter, we put out a call for people to send us what their favorite game franchises were. So we did an auction with the general rules being that if you win the auction for the franchise, you're allowed to play all past and future titles. However, if you lose the auction, you will never be able to play that franchise again. The pre-existing games or any future games that may eventually be released in it. So that's kind of what we did. The franchises that we had for board games, there was 10 franchises in each board and video game. So board games, the franchises were Ticket to Ride, Codenames, Star Wars, Century, thinking of like Century Golem Edition, Pandemic, Forbidden, i.e. Forbidden Island, Forbidden Desert, Dominion, Dead of Winter, Catan, and Time Stories. So those were, for board games, the 10 franchises we had. And rather than go redo our auction, because that probably wouldn't work really well because we both know what each other person wanted now, we're just going to let you know what the results were from yesterday. And Josh won Century, Time Stories, Ticket to Ride, Forbidden, and Star Wars. And I walked away with Dead of Winter, Dominion, Pandemic, Catan, and Codenames.
And $7 extra.
Yes, and I had $7 extra. You had $0 extra. So you spent all your money. I had enough money to go get Starbucks. So yes. I count that as another win for myself. So on the board game side, that's what we had. And before we talk about the video game side, we're just going to talk really briefly about why we bid on the ones that we did, what excites us about those franchises, and kind of how we decided what we wanted to go for. So Josh, when you look at your list, are you happy with your results? What were you most excited about? Were there any that were throwaways? Kind of what were you thinking as you're going through your bidding? Yeah,
I didn't expect or necessarily want to have Time Stories, but I did end up with it for $2, so I can't argue with that.
It's a good deal for $2.
Simply just because we never got through the base game, so I don't even know to love the expansions. But I get to continue playing them, so that's good.
That is good.
I spent the most for Ticket to Ride. I spent $6 on that. And I mean, Ticket to Ride is such a great series because you could literally teach it to anybody because there's so many different varieties of boards. If you want to teach it to someone who's never played a game, there's a Ticket to Ride for that. If you want to teach it to someone who wants a more almost Euro difficulty style game, there's a Ticket to Ride for that. So it's just so versatile. And then Star Wars, I paid $5 for. And I mean, there's Star Wars everything. I could play Star Wars Monopoly, Carcassonne, Risk, Armada, Rebellion, X-Wing, Legion, all those awesome, hard to find, out of print Star Wars games that people seek out now, like Queen's Gambit. There's so many Star Wars games I could play forever because they never stop making Star Wars.
As the Fantasy Flight little press conference that happened the evening we're recording this proved, they are never going to stop making Star Wars games.
That's right.
So Speaking of which, I just have to bring this up really briefly because they announced tonight that for Star Wars Armada, they are releasing a Super Star Destroyer miniature for the Armada game. Now, there are pictures on Fantasy Flight's Twitter, which is just at FF Games, of this thing. It is huge. When I look at it, that thing has to be, there's a gentleman holding it up on stage, and I can't quite see who the gentleman is because he's very washed out. But that thing has to be 18 inches, 24 inches. It's huge.
It's very big.
It is absolutely massive. But the mind-blowing part of it to me is that this Super Star Destroyer, which will come out sometime in Q1 2019, is $199.95, Josh.
Mm-hmm.
And just think, you get to get that now and keep playing Star Wars games.
I'm going to get it. I'm going to hang it on some fishing line from my ceiling so it just looks like it's flying around in my house.
But how much is the Armada base game? 60? 70? Or is it $100? It might be 100, right?
It might be 100. I mean, I have it literally right next to me.
Perfect.
And that's just a coincidence.
All right, it looks like it's 80.
So I probably paid 100 when I got it.
Yeah. So this expansion ship is more than twice as much as the base game is for one
There
ship.
you go. Well, I mean, it's no giant Azul, but
That's true. It is no giant Azul.
it's close.
Did we ever find out if that got fun? Like, did they get enough pre-orders for that?
I can't imagine they did, but I'll.
Well, while you look that up, I will talk about my list briefly. So I came away with, Dead of Winter is, for how few games there are in that franchise, Dead of Winter really is one of my favorite game franchises because to me, it is, I look at it similar to Walking Dead, but actually more similar in some ways to Battlestar Galactica in the sense that it's not necessarily caring about why zombies are there. Walking Dead doesn't really care that much about it, but it tries to tell stories more about, okay, people are in this situation, but how do they handle these things since they're in that situation? That it's not about how do we find out how zombies came here? And I kind of feel like BSG was just like a drama set in space. It was a drama show that happened to be in space. So they had to deal with those space things, but it wasn't necessarily always about the fact that they were in space. And I feel that way about Dead of Winter. And I really like that about it. It's a game that I can always go back to, feel really involved in. Plus, they have a dog, and there's a dog character, and there's a comic book about Sparky. And I think that is fantastic. So I was really happy to pick up Dead of Winter. Dominion, for me, is one of those games that I always enjoy deck builders. Dominion was, like many people, the first deck builder that I played. There's a ton of expansions for it, and a game that, because of how it works and all the expansions, it can always feel a little bit different when you're playing it. So I was really happy to pick up Dominion. Pandemic is also one of those games that I know, similar to Ticket to Ride for You, Pandemic is one of those games that I feel very comfortable introducing to almost anyone, no matter how much they've played games, because it is cooperative. It's much easier, I feel like, to help people and give suggestions and not be the alpha gamer, but kind of guide them through that experience and get them kind of rolled into things and all of that good stuff. Catan is more similar, just a really easy way to introduce people to games. I know Catan sometimes gets a bad rap as a result of, the maybe not as much of a gamer's game anymore, or a hobby gamer. It's definitely that bridge game or gateway game, but I still like it, and I have most of the expansions for it, so it's nice that I could still use those, unlike every Ticket to Ride board I own, which is like 8 of them. And then Codenames. Here's the funny thing: I've only ever played Codenames once.
Really?
I have multiple versions of it though, but I've only ever played it once, because to me it's like one of those games that you play like when you get a group of people together. And, that doesn't happen very often. And we actually don't own Codenames Duet, which is weird, because it seems like that should be the one that we have, but we don't. Yeah, but we don't. So, yeah, overall, I'm pretty happy with my list, though. Nothing super, super heavy on it, but I think also when you're talking about game franchises, not really heavy games outside of maybe some of those games in the Star Wars series aren't things that tend to see a ton of franchises as far as board games go. So, did you find anything out about Azul?
Yeah, it doesn't look like they... When you click the link to do the pre-order, it says this item is no longer available. So I'm going to go, and there was no other mention of it. So, I mean, it was either made or it wasn't, but it looks like it wasn't.
Gotcha. Okay.
They pretty much erased it from their website.
All right. Well, hey, it's nice that they tried. They'll never know unless they ask. So, all right. So after board games, we moved on to video games. And the video game auction was a little more interesting than the board game auction was. One of us definitely walked away more of a winner than the other one.
Yeah, I feel like a winner too.
You were a winner. So Josh walked away with massive. Okay, well, all of the series that we had, or the franchises that we had, were Halo, God of War, Uncharted, Gears of War, Star Wars, again, Mass Effect, Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, BioShock, and Tomb Raider. Josh walked away with Mass Effect, Assassin's Creed, BioShock, Star Wars, Gears of War, and Far Cry, and still had $2 remaining. I walked away with Tomb Raider, God of War, Halo, and Uncharted, and had $4 remaining. So one of us got a few more game franchises than the other person did. How did you feel about your performance? Was there anything you were disappointed that you didn't get? How did you feel overall?
See, that's the question. Just because I have more doesn't mean I win. I was sad to lose Uncharted. That was probably the one out of all of them I would regret the most. I know, it's like blasphemy to not want Halo. All these people, all the Xbox, or what Devin calls them, all the Xbots are going to be mad at me for not going after Halo, but I like Halo just fine. It's a great series. It got a little stale in the past 3 games. And God of War has been great for me, especially like the PSP games from it and stuff. Got plenty of thumb blisters from those. But yeah, I mean, Star Wars, Mass Effect, Assassin's Creed, just those alone, awesome. And then Gears of War, Far Cry, and Bioshock on top of that. So I'm not mad. I'm happy with what I got. You know, Tomb Raider's been great, the reboot, but if you look at Tomb Raider on the whole, it's not been a great series. So I'm okay with letting that one go.
What was the one series you actually, and counting board games as well, what was the one series in both of these, or the one franchise in both of these you most wanted to get?
That I most wanted to get?
Yeah, like what was number one on your depth chart?
I think number one for me for board games was Ticket to Ride series.
Okay.
For video games, as much as I give it crap, it will always be Mass Effect. So I got both. I'm happy.
Excellent.
What about you?
Yeah, so my number one for board games was actually Dead of Winter, which like I said, I think for most people would be weird. Pandemic was a close second, though, and I ended up with both of them, so I was very happy. And then for video games, the number one franchise I wanted was Uncharted. I'm a huge Uncharted fan. I love Uncharted. I love third-person action games. Henceforth, Uncharted, God of War, and Tomb Raider.
Halo.
The only game that I'm really bummed, right? The only game that you got that I really wanted actually was Assassin's Creed. That would be the one. For you. Yeah, I know. No more hippos. I'm really bummed about that. So yeah, that's actually the only one that you had that I was really bummed about. I would have taken Gears of War, but yeah, Assassin's Creed was the only other one I wanted. I'm just a third-person action gamer. I enjoy them. I really like playing third-person action games. I could play the Uncharted series over and over and over again and be happy. The first two games in the Tomb Raider reboot, I love. I'm assuming the third one, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, when it comes out in September, I'm assuming is going to be great as well. So I'm looking forward to that. So for me, like just getting into that third person, you know, to use Naughty Dog's term, the wide linear, like that style game, I just love it. I have a lot of fun playing those games. I love story in games. And I know there are people out there who are going to say, well, if you love story, read books, watch movies, watch television, don't play games. Well, I like story in all of those mediums for different reasons. So sure. I'm a big fan of that. And actually Halo, I have a really weird relationship with Halo. On 360, I probably played 1,000 hours of Halo 3. Yeah. You know, but I have never played Halo 1 or 2, ever. Really? Ever.
That's so bizarre.
I know. And then I played Halo 3, I played ODST, I played Reach, and I have Halo 5, but I haven't played it yet. So like, it's just I have a very weird relationship with it. I've always really respected Halo, and I think it's cool what they do. I just have like, once I moved on and, you know, kind of stopped with my multiplayer gaming, I just have really never been called back or had people who wanted to play Halo, so I've just really never played it anymore. But I have a strong desire to again. I've always liked the game. I found the shooting in Halo to be exceptional. I've always liked how it felt. I always liked the fact that it wasn't, even though I played a lot of Call of Duty, at a certain level, Call of Duty is if I see you first, I win if I'm good enough. You know, for the most part, like if you are the person who sees the other person first, you should win those battles. And Halo, that's not necessarily true. You know, there's definitely a little more skill and things you can do. And it's even interesting because it's stuff that I still carry with me into Overwatch, which I know doesn't work with every Overwatch character. But like, if I'm being shot from behind, I still look down and like run around a corner. Because like, that's what you do in Halo to not get headshot. Like that is still ingrained in me when I do some of those things. So yeah, I was actually pretty happy with my 4. I know that it's not the, you know, hundreds and hundreds of hours that you're going to get in Mass Effect and things like that. But I'm actually really happy with how my 4 ended up. So yeah.
Good. That's all that matters.
Absolutely. So, hey, that is the little auction that we did. Sorry you didn't get to hear the auction live, but I think actually potentially our discussion of the auction might have possibly been a little more interesting than the auction itself. So maybe this worked out better. Who knows?
Yeah, you're probably right.
All right. Well, Josh, as we wrap up recording episode 43 for a second time, anything else you want to talk about? Anything else you want to chat about before we go?
There is actually. So we talked about something. I don't remember how it came up necessarily, but I know how it came up. I just don't remember when. So Villainous was probably, at least the plan is, to be my last game purchase until PAX Unplugged. So we were talking about that, which means I have all these backlog games to play. So Kyle and I were talking, And Kyle's like, well, how many games from PAX Unplugged have you not played yet?
Right.
And I said, oh, that's a great question. I mentioned it to my wife, mentioned what I thought I wanted to do, and she was on board. So what I did today was I went through the house and I wrote down not just PAX Unplugged games, but every game that I have that I haven't played or haven't played in this house yet. There's 2 games that fit an exception to that rule. One being Smash Up. I've played it a bunch, but my wife hasn't. And Mystic Vale, we've only played at PAX Unplugged. So I put those 2 on the list. So I have a list of 61 games.
Holy goodness.
And I have them all written down on lined paper, going to cut each line, going to throw them in a hat, and every week, the intention of every week, from now until PAX Unplugged, I'm going to put a list, I'm going to do a poll on our Twitter of 4 games randomly drawn out of my hat, and we will play the game that is voted on every week, no matter how difficult, no matter how light, because there's some light games, there's some heavy games in here. It doesn't mean it'll be the only game we play that week, but, and I'm just realizing I missed a couple games, so it's probably going to be like 65 games. Not that I was thinking of some light games that I didn't count. So every week we will play at least that game and maybe another game if it was either bad or short or something went wrong, whatever. I want to make sure we have backups too. But that's the plan. The games that don't get picked will go back into the hat. The game that does get picked, I will leave out, and either I'll burn it or praise it. Who knows? But that's the plan. I'm excited to get some of these games that we wouldn't normally sit down and look at and pick to play because of rule book being like, there's definitely a Portal Games game on here. So it'll be something I will have to take a day ahead of time to read the rules for and watch some videos. But I'm excited to do it. That's the plan. I will do my best to follow through for you guys. But we don't get paid for this, so no promises. I also did mention, since I'm not buying games till PAX Unplugged, myself and Kyle will happily accept donations or review copies if friends from Plaid Hat are listening, or Renegade Games, whoever's out there. So send us you're sick, you're tired, and you're poor,
or one of those 200 copies of Guardians that Plaid Hat has at FinCon, which I don't even know if it actually happened. I know that's what that was saying it was going to happen. I
saw his picture today holding up a physical copy of it. So
they must have gotten them then.
Some aspect.
Very cool.
But yeah, that's all I really wanted to add on to the end there.
Awesome. All right. Why don't you take us home then, sir?
Okay. Let's do it. Thank you, everybody, for joining us once again. Remember, you can find us spelled the same way all the time. BOARD with VG. I don't have to spell the whole thing out, just the tricky part. At Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and gmail.com. We are on all the things. If you're our new Facebook followers, thank you. Please rate us. We get a bunch of good 5-star reviews. Even feel free to put some words in those reviews. Most of them are just 5-star reviews, which is fine. And if you're coming to us from the Plaid Hat episodes, please hit us up on social media. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, suggestions, ideas, whatever, what have you. Make sure you're hashtagging all your things board with VG so we can see your games, board or video that you're playing. And the funny thing is, I did pull out my Switch ID the other night for the podcast. I'm not going to do it this episode just to keep the mystique. So you will never find me on Switch. But that's it for my plugs, Kyle.
I actually wrote down your Switch code when you said it yesterday, and it's still sitting right here. So I could say it, but I'm not going to.
It's up to you.
No, I'm not going to. We'll keep the mystique going. As always, you can find me on all of the things at Psychocross, CYCOCROSS. That is on Twitter, Instagram, PlayStation Network, Xbox Live, and Board Game Geek. All at those things. If you have any suggestions for future topics, be sure to reach out to us on the social medias. We love to hear from you all, and we want to talk about what you want to hear about. Thanks so much for listening, and as always, everyone, Whether it be board games or video games, never stop gaming.
This has been a production of the Play Some Video Games Podcast Network. Find more great content at playsomevideogames.com.